Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon International as we're getting ourselves ready for Championship Sunday in our grand final match between Method EU and Abrakeydabra. I'm Jack, and joining me for all the action for this grand finals, we've got Sloot, Nagura, and Zyronic. And guys, this one has been a massive surprise to us. Maybe not what we've been expecting from Season 1 here, Sloot. Abrakeydabra has really hit their stride throughout time trials and cup play this weekend and is in the grand finals right now.
I mean, they had.
Those are all facts. I don't know.
Okay, fine. They're all facts, but they didn't exactly dominate and get here. I mean, they've had a lot of the issues that we touted last season as well, but they've certainly performed better. I mean, the big deal is going to be, are they going to beat Method EU here? And certainly if they play like they did in the series versus Method NA, they have quite the chance to.
They definitely do. And, all right, that's a fair point of they're not dominant, but I don't think thus far we've seen any team be insanely dominant in the same vein that we saw the dominance out of Method EU in Season 1, right? They were beating everybody the first season of MDI. They were beating everybody by a mile, consistently, all of that. Seems like right now, a lot of the teams are coming much closer together here, and we're getting ourselves ready and raring to go. Even Twitch chat, we're getting ourselves to 56% at 44. Everyone's getting very close as we're getting our EU versus EU grand finals. Let's get it going in the Shrine of the Storm.
All right, Nagura, we don't have to get that close, all right? Just move away from me just a bit here as we start off our first championships of the first cup of the summer season here, Method EU versus Abrakeydabra. The gates are about to fall as Shrine of the Storm starts out for both teams. Nagura, last time we saw Method EU at the beginning of this dungeon, they had a lot of problems.
Yeah, we've seen this over and over by Method EU, just doing this snapping pull where they jump in this lantern. We see it one more time here, but this time they actually use a different lantern. So Method EU definitely changed up their strategy, while Abrakeydabra is doing the Method EU strat. So we see Abra doing Method EU, while Method EU actually just copying someone else's strat here. Interesting to see the development over 2 days, basically. And you know what? If it doesn't work out twice for you on Method EU side, then it definitely warrants a mix-up in strategy, as we can see right now.
But I thought third time's the charm, but I guess not in the case of Method EU. Also important to note here, Method EU committed, as usual, their bloodlust at the top of the stairs here, something that Abrakeydabra has still held on to, and they've cleaned up their pull quite nicely here, just about to hit 10% trash in a moment, probably about 12 with all of the mobs combined. Method EU still having a bit of backpedaling and kiting here from now, just to make sure he's rounding up all of the temple attendants together, because those water bolts are quite damaging and they're quite frequent, so they just don't have access to constant interrupts. You can even see the cooldown at the top of the screen for the 3 rogues and the warrior. Abrakeydabra finishing up and using one of the mass stealths to get down and dirty at the bottom of the stairs, getting ready to aggro Accuseer here, and of course punt that enchanted emissary away.
So I actually really like what Abra did here. So they did the whole lantern strategy that Method EU did, but they were not pulling all of the trash that we've seen from Method EU. They were actually using their CCs, like the rogue blinds, to get some of the CC of the spiritualists from the patrol. So they didn't have those casters to deal with on the lantern, and those are the ones that tend to reset if you do the snapping pull, and that's what Method EU was swiping to. So Abra was doing the same pull as Method EU, but getting rid of those casters to not have them reset. So really like this by Abra, as they're already engaging Acquaseer here, while Method EU just now pulled in.
Just now pulling indeed. Smog has Prox's Undulating Ties, not available for another 30 seconds or so as they pulled Heldas. Both teams have actually pulled Heldas, as we've seen Method EU do prior, and just use it to help cleave on top of the boss using the power of that haste rune. You can see the rogue sitting in there with Gingy, Mirrors, and of course Frag just getting all that 25% haze to try and catch up to Abra right now. That's just looking like they're having a very solid start. Accuseer 75% on the board with 20% trash for them, and Method EU sitting at 19% with just passing 80% on Accuseer.
Yeah, one thing to note as well is that both Method EU and Abra already played Shrine yesterday in this cup. So Method EU had 21-14, while Abra had 21-58. So Abra was 40 seconds faster, approximately 40 seconds slower. Sorry. So Abra definitely had a chance to mix up their strategy and maybe copy some things from Method EU.
But Abra's, you know, they're not maintaining their lead for very long here. We know the single target damage prowess that Method EU have has right now, and they've actually pretty much caught Abrakeydabra. Both teams sitting at 55 apiece on AccuSeer and should be entering the transition phase here at around the same time. Now we're going to see if they opt to combine any trash with that. The thing is, Abrakeydabra doesn't really have any trash to combine with that. They've killed the pack with the Enchanted Emissary up top. They've killed Heldis at the bottom, the mini-boss. Method.EU does have access to that Arcane Emissary at the top of the stairs, so we'll see if they want to combine that with the boss when it recombines at around 15% once these 3 Aqualings are dead.
Smock dropping so low, proccing the staff there, and he's also very low on mana. Definitely struggling a little bit here with Heldis still being alive. Just constantly keep casting this AoE. The Gale Winds, you can see Divine Field dropping very low as well. This might be a problem for them if they don't finish off Heldis here. Just constantly casting this AoE, and Smock, you know, struggling with mana, struggling with HP.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have stabilized. They do have just enough break between Heldis, but they want to keep Heldis alive as long as possible, just because you want to take advantage of that rune. But, you know, like you're saying, Nagura, at what cost, right? You don't want to have to lose somebody on this fight, especially your Resto Druid. Nobody has a Battle Res after that. Ashine dipping quite low here as well, but they managed to heal him up as AccuSeer has reculminated in this full form. But Method.EU just rocketing ahead. They did pull the Enchanted Emissary pack at the top of the stairs and are combining it with the last few percent of AccuSeer in order to get the boss down and get some extra cleave percentage, while Abrakeydabra only now is at 8%. So Method.EU's efficiency and single target DPS has really just surpassed Abra at the moment.
Yeah, one thing to note though is that Abra does have that Bloodlust available. Method.EU did use it on their very first pull here, so Abra can pull off this huge pull right after this in this hallway here with the next mini boss. And I'm not sure if Method.EU can do the exact same thing without their Bloodlust. We will see.
No, so I mean, I think the corner pack consisting of 4 units is probably not going to get pulled, and I say that actually now does pull it. So they're going to run down and pull everything without Bloodlust. Abracadabra is going to do the same pull, and we're expecting to see that Bloodlust start shining up in just a second here as the rest of the mobs go in and start hitting Divine Field. He moves out of the Ironhill Apprentice's AoE, and there finally is the Bloodlust for them as Method.EU moves out of the Rune Carver Sorn rune on the ground to make sure that none of the mobs are having a 70% damage reduction, but the players, of course, wanting to stand in that instead.
Yeah, you can see all of them just ignoring basically all of the mechanics because this 70% damage reduction, it's just a general reduction against everything. So you can ignore the quaking, you can stack up in this rune, you can ignore everything else as long as you stand in there, because the damage that you do take through the 70% reduction is not going to be a big deal for Celia or Smock to heal away. Now, the Bloodlust definitely paying off here. As you can see, Abrakeydabra arrived, they pulled this trash a little bit later, but because of the Bloodlust, they're definitely finishing it faster.
Finishing it faster and safer as well, because Mir's procced his cheat death on that, so a bit of sloppiness there. Now had dipped quite low. Fortunately, no danger of dying after that. Method.EU just slightly ahead on trash, and they have pulled the trash pack just guarding the bridge with the Guardian Elemental is. They've made sure to crowd control with the root after a blind for the Emissary of Tide sitting in the doorway, because there are a few dangerous casters in here, including the one that will heal the group, the Spiritualist. So you want to make sure you're interrupting the Mending Rapids, and you can't do that if that Tide's Emissary is in there, who has now broken free because they have killed off that Spiritualist, and they're going to try to efficiently cleave it down in the group. Abrakeydabra doing the same thing, but once again, it's starting to move just a bit slower.
Yeah, very similar strategies here by Method.EU and Abrakeydabra, of course. You see the percentage now, Method.EU just finishing off this trash pack faster, again, without the Bloodlust. So, as I was saying, Abra did the first pull faster, but it took them longer to aggro the next pack. Method.EU just finished off the first one and immediately pulled the next pack into Sorn, into the mini-boss, while Abrakeydabra just waiting a little bit, just having Sorn by itself, probably waiting for some cooldowns to come back up, and then pick the next pack up. So Abrakeydabra falling a little bit behind.
Disaster here for Method.EU. They did not get their skip off on the Guardian Elemental. Zalia's gone down, and it looks like it's going to be a full team wipe here. Fortunately, they have killed the mini-boss as just part of the new meta strategy right now, but that's going to be all she wrote for Method.EU on this bridge. They're going to have to try that one again, and unfortunately, they don't have access to most of the Shadow Melds, so they might have to commit killing the Guardian Elemental right now. Abrakeydabra has done their skip properly and is punting the Arcane Emissary away right now as they cleave down the rest of the trash. Abrakeydabra just handed a huge freebie here. Yeah,
this is a huge mistake by Method.EU because, I mean, yes, Celia can get back with the Shroud here by the Rogues, but they won't be able, as you said, to skip this mini-boss on the bridge anymore without their Shadow Melts available. So they will have, we saw now, just kite everything backwards, just keep everyone alive, because they have to finish this trash now. I'm not sure if they can pull this up because there's so much trash and the mini boss is still there.
They have to be careful as well because they're backing up into a Void Emissary. You can see the debuff on Frag, and now it just went off. They're backing up into the Void Emissary. Mears gets clipped by it again, so they have nowhere else to run or hide right now as they're trying to deal with the rest of this absolutely abysmal pull. Frag goes down as well. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to finish this off. Abrakeydabra, everything's bright and sunny for them right now as they pulled the remainder of the trash that they needed to on top of the boss and have already gotten started on Brother Ironhull and Gale Caller Faye here.
They were trying to get a Battle Rest off on Frag. We can see it go off right now as Elliot does have time to cast it. I mean, in the end, I think it definitely saved them more time to try and finish off this pull as it's working out for them right now, because instead of just wiping it off and going again, but still, this is just costing them so much time. They still have to work on this. Actually, no, they're waiting for their Shadow Meld now. Okay, so they are going to skip the Elemental that is still in combat with them. They have their Shadow Meld available right now, so they can get it off. So in the end, you know, they made the best of it, but they're still like very far behind compared to Abra, as they're already fighting Brother Ironhull and Gale Caller Faye, 50% on Gale Caller Faye.
So yeah, I mean, the one kind of silver lining here for Method EU by trying to salvage that pull and ultimately salvaging the full team wipe is that they did manage to actually squeeze an extra 2% trash that they likely would have skipped as a result of that bit of a mess that they had. But that's 5 deaths on the board, plus obviously just moving extremely slow to even get to the position on the boss right now that Abrakeydabra are at. Abrakeydabra opting to do a less cleave-friendly strat here and trying to kill off Faye earlier, it looks like, because we do know we're in a tyrannical setting, meaning that you cannot just let all of her casts go through as freely as you could in the fortified setting in the previous season. They do a ton of damage, but as a result of interrupting those, we see all these Gale wins all over the platform right now. So the team kind of has to cut their losses here and get rid of Faye early.
Yeah, we actually saw, I believe it was Method and A who killed Brother Ironhull before they actually finished off Gale Caller Faye, which is something we haven't really seen before, just maximizing the cleave damage as much as possible just to be faster. Even though, of course, we all know that Gale Caller Faye is much more dangerous compared to Brother Ironhull. He doesn't really do much except just frontal and some tank damage, while Gale Caller Faye is the one that casts the Slicing Blast and those tornadoes the whole time, which are very dangerous. And we've seen numerous players die to those tornadoes in the past, even on a fortified setting. So on Tyrannical, you definitely are going to get one shot, unless you're a rogue and you have cheat death.
Unless you're rogue and cheat death indeed. Also important to note, Zmok had procced his staff a lot earlier right now. He has about 3 minutes left on that staff proc for the Ashara staff later in the dungeon should he need. Now it won't be nearly as powerful by pooling it up the entirety of the dungeon, but something that we do have to note there. Brother Ironhull, 15% for Abrakeydabra as they look to finish off the boss. Gale Caller Faye has indeed already fallen. Now, a lot of hiccup on this dungeon that we've seen so far this season, Nigger, is coming up with the Enforcers and the Ritualists. We've seen a lot of teams have, I mean, just tank Gibbs all of a sudden missed interrupts on the Shadow Bolt volley AoE from the Ritualist. So we'll see exactly what Abra has up their sleeve here in terms of magic tricks, while Method EU still working to chisel away at Iron Hose now at 30%.
So one more thing to know, Method, you did use their second Bloodlust just right now. So this means that they're probably going to get 3 Bloodlusts in this whole dungeon, while Abra is only going to get 2 as they saved their first Bloodlust for this very trash pull after Aquaseer. So Method, you are going to get 1 more Bloodlust usage off. Now, I'm not sure how much it's going to matter as they're pretty far behind at this point, but Abra doing this huge Enforcer pull, which we've seen Method and A struggle to earlier, where we saw Nerf go down, but Divine Field doing a much better job kiting here, and everyone's staying alive. Yeah,
Divine Field basically front-loaded all of his CDs. He popped his Last Stand, Shield Wall, everything at the start. His Spell Reflection just came off CD right now, so he does have that 15% DR available if needed, but the team's doing an excellent job here of helping him kite with the Ursula's Vortex and keeping the mob slowed, but also interrupting the Unending Darkness cast, that Shadow Bolt volley from the Ritualist. So perfectly done here from Abra as they immediately run through and are getting ready to Shadow Meld all of the trash that just ran through at the base of the bridge here. Method EU has now finished off the second boss and is just having their own struggles right now with the Enforcer group, as a couple of casts did go off of Unending Darkness, which is why the pack was so low, but it looks like they're starting to stabilize as now just gets out of dodge away from those Enforcers, and the team helps clean things up.
You see how scary this pull is, though. Now just tanking all those Enforcers, had to pop the Last Stand on top of Shield Wall and Iron Bark. So all of the cooldowns basically being popped just to be able to get this, to get the Enforcers gathered up. Once they're gathered up, they can start kiting, and then it's not going to be a huge problem anymore. But the problem is gathering them up. Now actually dropping really low here as he gets hit by the Void Emissary. But now they are going to skip quite ahead, and then they use their Shadow Melt to drop the aggro here.
Yeah, a lot of rattle damage coming in here on the group. The Void Emissary just clipped them. They got a 2 Unending Darkness cast go off. Mirrors dipped really low on the way out there. They managed to skate by with anything that was too drastic once again for Method EU as they've joined Abrakeydabra on the bridge here, but they're only starting their Tentacle pack right now as Abrakeydabra has already finished with the Tenta-Ayayakals and is working on the Cultist pack. They'll skip the Enchanted Emissary here with, of course, the Shroud, and they'll move on over into the next room. Now, Zmok's going to have his staff available for the next room like we saw JB do, but it's gonna, again, I don't think it'll have much charge to it, so I don't know if they can rely on that for the right pack that consists of the Emissary of Tides as well on top of all the small dwellers.
Yeah, probably not. Just now, the debuff was gone on Smog, as you mentioned, but it might just not be enough. Maybe they have to use some defensive or safe defensives to be able to survive the Lash cast, which of course is not interruptible because of this Emissary of Tides that you can see right here. Now they go in, unfortunately they get the Quaking as well. Very unfortunate timing. They need to make sure they finish this off very fast to be able, because they can't interrupt those Lashes, right? They can't have those AoE stuns go through, but they're doing a really good job finishing it off with regardless.
Yep, getting those 5 rolls no problem for the Rogues as they demolish everything in sight just in time for Lord, actually even faster than Lord Stormsong's RP, which has just now ended. So the boss is accessible for Abrakeydabra, is now singing to 88% trash, just the amount they need in this new season because of the rebalancing of percentages for this dungeon. So Abrakeydabra looking nice and mighty right now with Lord Stormsong at 90% as Method EU has 88% trash, of course, on the board as well, and they haven't even started the boss yet.
Yeah, I mean, Method EU, to be honest, I thought they would be further behind because of this huge mistake that they did earlier, but at this point they're not actually that far behind if you disregard the 5 deaths. Now, of course, with the deaths,
yeah,
25 seconds, right? But otherwise, they're still very close when it comes to just actual time in the dungeon. Now, one more thing. Method EU are going to have the Bloodlust available, but very late on the boss. Well, Abrakeydabra will get their Bloodlust up right now, so they can use it whenever they want to on the last boss. Well, Method EU are probably just only going to get it at the very end.
Yeah, but we all know everybody saves it for trying to push that Volzith. And now nobody has been able to one-phase it. I think they know that they can't one-phase it either, but nonetheless, they do probably want to get that boss as low as possible. Now, whether they combine it with some eels or the trash as well, again, we'll have to see. We saw, I think, Method NA try to do that earlier, and it was disastrous because the trash reset once they entered the second transition phase. So I'm sure these teams have made note of that and perhaps won't be trying that same strategy. Lord Stormsong here, 35% for Abrakeydabra versus Method EU's 55%. So they're maintaining that 20 to 25% lead over Method EU. I mean, Method EU's got their work cut out for them big time here. Not only do they need to obviously catch up in the first place, but then overcome Abrakeydabra, who's looking stellar right now by at least 25 seconds.
One more thing to mention is the one team that managed to get the boss to 4% before the second intermission phase was Abrakeydabra. They were the one team that had the most single target damage on this last boss. So maybe if they just squeeze out a little bit more damage, they would be able to finish it off. But 4% on a tyrannical boss is still quite a bit. So maybe they're just not going to be able to do it. Now, one more thing to note, if you're just not going to be able to one-phase the boss, you only get one transition, maybe the Bloodlust usage should be used for something else. Maybe at the very start of the boss where you pull the eels on top of the boss, maybe it would be a better usage than later on. I don't know.
Or maybe just not use it and teach you a lesson, Nickera, for using their Bloodlust late. Abrakeydabra downs the boss here, about 17% ahead of Method EU's standing when the boss actually flopped over and gets on in the Jellyfish Cove on the pathway to the last boss's room. Volzith, Method EU follows suit right now, waiting for that water to clear from the lightning as they all jump in happily now that there's no damage, and of course will not get hit by any of the jellyfish down there. Nickera.
Yeah, so I would never get hit by that. Actually, never did.
Okay.
Okay, so Abrakeydabra on their way, which we've seen from almost all of the teams so far, was that they pulled 2 of the eel packs on top of the boss, which we're probably going to see from Abrakeydabra here as well. As you can see, Divine Field just charging into the eels and leaping on top of the land here. We see a very bad Quaking, but it should be alright for all of them. Now, once they engage the boss, okay, now I actually take it back. Bloodlust, the pull will not be good because, of course, Smok doesn't have the damage buff yet.
Of course.
You don't want to do that.
Certainly don't want that from Smockykins. So Abrakeydabra here on Volzith the Whisper right now, cleaving down those inconsequential eels. Just want to make sure that the tank's in melee range of them, especially when you're kiting them over to the boss, else they will apply their shadow damage to a nearby member, likely the rogue if they're kind of falling asleep at the wheel, but no problem for either team in that regard, as Volzith is now at 80%. So, we talk about that final burn, but it's quite important to get the boss as low as possible, even in the first phase, just to make that second burn good. And I've seen Volzith at 72 and 74% today, pre-transition phase. Abrakeydabra has him at 77 right now, so I don't see them making it in the widen phase after this transition. Method EU, I mean, look, the only way Method EU is winning right now, outside of Abrakeydabra doing a full team wipe, is for them to one phase the boss.
Yeah.
Which I just don't think they can. But, if there's any team that can prove that theory wrong, it would be Method EU.
And they won't have Bloodlust. 2 minutes 30.
Unlucky.
So definitely not going to be able to one phase without the Bloodlust. As I said, just too late. I mean, it's going to be ready before the end of the dungeon, but just too late, right? They're not going to be able to one phase, and therefore they're also not going to win against Abra unless Abra does make mistakes, which still can happen as they're pulling this middle pack here with the denizens. And now we've seen Method make a huge mistake and actually interrupt the boss, drag it on top of those denizens, and then drop the boss pool and almost wiping to it, or just losing a lot of time because they actually reset, got another intermission. But Abrakeydabra not interrupting the boss, just dealing with the trash pack by itself. And of course, they need to get all of those interrupts off on the consume magic, because else Mock is going to get one shot with this buff on him.
That he will. 96% trash right now for Abra as they re-engage Volzith. There goes the Bloodlust. All CDs are up. Adrenaline rushes are popped. Avatar is popped. Everything is going, but Smock gets smacked in the face, I believe, by one of the tentacles. This is an absolute potential disaster here. They're going to have to finish off the boss, four-manning it with no healer in sight. Now, this is technically doable, especially because Divine Field is running the Urchin Trinket, so he has some form of throughput in terms of self-sustain from healing. But this is going to be
damage.
Yeah, this is going to be very hard to do. I don't know how he's going to have to survive with the kiting the mob upstairs in his phase and wait for the rogues to finish their kicks, and then they're going to have to go finish the mob, the transition mob for him. So this is going to be very tough here. Method EU hot on their heels right now as they hit 43% HP.
I mean, even if they manage to finish off the boss, look at the amount of damage the healers are doing. They're doing 60k, and this is single target DPS. All of the rogues' damage is a little bit skewed because of the eels that they pulled at the very start. So they were doing a lot of AoE, so the damage does not really mean it's all single target damage. Well, Staelia and Smock, they were only doing single target damage. With this buff that they have, the damage increase, 60k DPS missing for Abrakeydabra for the rest of the fight here. Well, Method EU, they're on their second intermission phase. Once they get up, they also have their Bloodlust in 30 seconds. So they will have their Bloodlust to finish up the boss and finish up the trash. I believe this is going to be Method EU, even with the 20 seconds difference still here.
Dude, this is Abrakeyd disaster right now.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
They're going to have to run in and try to... they might actually get another transition phase without that healer damage once they're done with this one. They still have 29% on a tyrannical boss. This is going to be very hard to do. So much time wasted here as Divine Field needs to keep running around and kiting in circles. He can't go on that mob by himself. He does not have the throughput to deal with it. One of Warrior's weaknesses, you just don't have much self-healing, so he's relying on his trinket, but the trinket is no charge because he's not getting any damage in the first place. So he has to wait for the rogues to come up and help him finish the ad, which they're now doing, and they're immediately going to go back on the boss. Method EU is already back on the boss. They've popped Bloodlust, they've interrupted, and they're about to finish it off and drag the eels on top of it. So they have a 20-second buffer over this, but this is going to be really tight.
20 seconds I don't think is going to be enough, and I don't know. I mean, Smock dying, I'm not sure if it was aggro from the boss, because it definitely can happen, or if it was a tentacle, but such a huge mistake.
Zalia
going down too.
Zalia goes down at the very end of the dungeon. I'm not sure if that was after the timer, so we'll have to see if that technically gets added. But Volzith here, 8% for Abrakeydabra, and time is ticking away. They have 7 seconds, 6 now, and they're just not going to have enough time. I'm not sure if the 5 seconds from Zalia is added or not, but even with that, they still have to deal with the eels and got another transition phase at 2%. My God, Game of Throws is back.
Abrakeydabra just did a disappearing act on the last boss there, and Method EU is in a prime position to take it as game one goes to them on Shrine of the Storm. And it's ironic. That was just, we were talking about, like, okay, what's going to have to happen in order for Abra to be able to lose it? And then right as we walk out, it's like, oh, Zmock's gone.
Oh, no.
It's like, well, we knew what was going to happen, and it's like, oh, nobody wipes to this boss, and then you see Zmock.
Wait a minute.
It's like, I mean, they could lose now, and I mean, technically at that point, it's not a total wipe because they have self-healing and stuff. But the story of the dungeon up to that point was Abra was, business as usual. They were doing what they did last match too. They ran through this dungeon cleanly, and they didn't really make any mistakes up to that point. There were no deaths in the dungeon. The only real mistake we saw from any of the teams was that major blunder from Method EU, which ended up costing them 5 deaths. And we'll look at that a bit later, but Abra, that was their dungeon to win, and they just threw it at the last second. I mean, that's the story of the dungeon. Method gave them the dungeon, and Abra said, nah, you can have it.
They really did. And I mean, there was even the point in particular that we've been talking about is just what it takes to be able to get to this point. And Abra was just able to capitalize very early on with that lead there, and that Method basically just gave to them with that early wipe there, Zyro.
Yeah, I mean, like we said there, this was literally Abra's game to win. Method making that mistake handed the dungeon on a silver platter to Abra, and even though it looked like Method EU was slowly coming back in the later stages of the dungeon, Abra was far enough ahead, especially with that 25-second advantage, to where, like we keep mentioning, it was theirs to win, and they kind of just threw it away at the last second.
That's right, and talking about that 25-second differential from the very beginning, Xaylia had incredible foresight, really, to be able to start seeing as that wipe was happening. So you want to dig into that a little bit more?
Yeah, we're taking a closer look at this bridge skip that we've seen so many teams wipe to throughout the years. They missed their Shadow Meld. Somebody forgets the Shadow Meld on the Guardian Elemental. Xaylia is already off screen because he realized this was happening, and you can see that Titan Initiate on the left. Because now pulled and took damage, he has the hots rolling on him still, so Xaylia gets aggro on that one Initiate. You can see him get meleeed 60% to 0 there. So he had the foresight, a little bit too much foresight. He was already off in the corner waiting for everyone else to die so he could res, and I mean, sometimes that's just kind of unfortunate there. If Now had aggro on that, they probably could have reset this pull, but that was just kind of one extra mistake, and he knew it was happening. It's just, other people in the group didn't.
It's just a classic kind of Shrine of the Storm run where you're having issues with that Guardian Elemental. We've seen all the teams having issues with it at some point or another, so that'll take us into a Game 2 on the Siege of Boralus. So don't go anywhere, guys. Game 2 of the Grand Finals on the other side of this break. Method EU is up 1 against Abrakeydabra as we're getting ourselves ready for round 2 in the Siege of Boralus. Another time trial dungeon, and this one Abrakeydabra has been doing very well on, Zyronic.
Yeah, so, okay, looking at Siege of Boralus, Abrakeydabra was definitely the team that took Method and A's strat to heart. Method and A, clearly one of the best teams at Siege of Boralus in this tournament, if not the best. Abrakeydabra took their strategy, just completely copy-pasted it, and honestly, they did a decent enough job at it. They're only about 45 seconds slower. And not only that, but they were able to completely replicate their time trial run in tournament play, only going 3 seconds slower yesterday. So they're definitely very well versed in this dungeon. And Method and A, we've not really seen too much from them outside of their time trials time, which was about a minute slower. I mean, I'm not omniscient. I can't watch all of their practice streams, so I don't know if they had something faster in practice. But I mean, looking at the times, they're going to have to put together a better run than what they had in time trials.
Without a doubt. We've seen a lot of teams, though, having extra time to be able to put into those time trial dungeons because we have had a greater window, for example, Nagura, to be able to practice and compete for these time trials. The format did change up a little bit for this season.
Yeah, numerous times we've seen that the groups or teams figured out a better strategy from their time trials to the cut play because, I mean, they had all of yesterday to look at other team strategies, and they've been streaming it too. So Method EU definitely had time to watch Method NA and Abra's strategy and adjust their own to match their time.
We'll have to see as we're getting ourselves ready for round 2.
Well, can't finish talking, Jack. There we go. Cut off by production. Very unfortunate. As we are in seat here with Method EU and Abrakeydabra, we see a shroud coming out of Abra here. We see some mistakes actually happening where the skip didn't work properly, and we saw some of the monks go down, but the skip working out perfectly here for Abra.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Nagura, thank you for reconnecting my microphone. I know you wanted to talk there, but you could have just asked. So here we go. Method EU out the gates indeed with Abra. Now, I mean, this one's for all the marbles for Method EU. They win this match, it's over. They win Cup 1 of the summer season. Abrakeydabra has really just got to shake off that bad feeling that they had after the loss in the previous dungeon and recompose themselves. They know that they had a superior time in time trials to Method EU here. So if anybody can pull it off, it is them. Both teams indeed are Horde. You can see all the Arcane Torrents at the top of the screen.
Yeah, there's a pretty huge pull that we see here by both of those teams coming out, also dealing with the Emissary of Tides here at the same time as they're done so right now. We see the Marksman, of course, very dangerous mobs to deal with, especially if you have the Emissary of Tides around. Cannot interrupt that Molten Slug, which does do a lot of damage and leaves behind a dot. Method U dealing with this a little bit faster, as you can see, but just slightly.
Both teams replicating a cheat death proc on one of the rogues. Of course, Fragnance Jimmy on Method EU has procced his, and Ashine has procced his on Abrakeydabra here as they're looking to pull the boss. Both of them at pretty much the same time. Abrakeydabra just slightly faster, but also 1% trash behind. Bloodlust has been committed at the exact same second for both teams here as they look to kite Sergeant Bainbridge, through the bombs that have littered the battlefield in order to not only do a chunk of damage, but also increase damage taken by 15%. So you got to have a good kiting path here. And Zmok just can't shake off the heebie-jeebies from last dungeon and goes down. No battle res available. They've already committed the bloodlust, so they're going to have to look to try and four-man this boss.
Yeah, this is a huge mistake by Abra here. Zmok just going down there. I'm not completely sure what happened. The boss was already kited into the bomb there, but he got hit by something else right afterwards. So, of course, so much pressure on the healer. And if you just go down at the very end of the dungeon, in Shrine of the Storms, and you lose the dungeon because of that, it's going to be on your mind, right? And now it happened one more time. I do hope that Zmok is going to be able to recover, because this is Zmok's debut actually this time around, because they used to have a different healer, Alstrad, in the spring season, and Alstrad stepped down, so Zmok was replacing him, and he has been doing a really good job so far. We haven't really seen him make any big mistakes, but now we saw this one death in Shrine, and now again just on this boss.
Yeah, nerves may indeed be getting the best of him right now, but Abrakeydabra holding their own and trying to finish off the boss right now. Sergeant Bainbridge hits 20% HP. Method EU wasting no time at full 5-man strength to finish that boss off and get a pull together here right after that. Now getting a pretty significant chunk of damage with the Curse Strike from, of course, some of the mobs in here, the Marauders specifically, wanting to make sure that you kind of get as much mitigation as you can, because it doesn't increase your damage taken by, I think, 15% per stack, something like that. So it leaves the tank quite vulnerable, but they do have low health, so no problem for this powerful Method EU team as they crush the rest of these opponents and move over to the next and final pull before we start with everybody's favorite spotter play.
So we saw the commander go swimming there for Method EU, just taking a swim. And then one more thing that we want to note here is the difference between Alliance and Horde, right? We've seen all of those teams actually play Alliance in the Australian Spring Final, but now all of those teams switch to Horde after all. And the biggest difference really is the mob difference and the different starting point. Now, one thing that the Horde has an advantage for them is that you actually have those gathers that kind of just die and kill themselves. They're fighting the footman, and if you tag them, which usually the healer does by just jumping in certain corners and using Moonfire and Sunfire to tag them, then you actually get the percentage from them without actually having to kill them at all, because they just killed themselves.
And oh man, Divine Field just dropped to 3% there while you were talking. That's why I kind of shocked out in pain. They really dodged a bullet there. As Abrakeydabra hits 20% on trash, they get ready for their spotter play soon. Something that Method EU is already progressing on right now as they get away from that Enchanted Emissary and finish off the rest of the trash, getting ready to start crossing the water in just a moment. They're cleaving down the spotter now. They don't want to take the spotter with them. There's plenty of other units available across the water and before the second boss, which is why they're just opting to kill that one off, get rid of its Sanguine on the side, and move on. Abrakeydabra doing what they can to claw back, but, you know, in a dungeon like, let's say, I don't know, Atoll maybe, right? You know, once this pace is kind of set, it's very hard for these teams at this caliber to mess up, but they're just because the pulls are pretty set, there's not too much creativity, or something like King's Rest even. Here, though, Nagura, especially after the second boss, there's a lot of danger that could be kind of put forward to pull even more into the spotters, and I think Abrakeydabra might need to do some high-risk stuff here.
Yeah, they definitely have to. We also see a Shine go down here, so one more mistake for Abrakeydabra, and those small things definitely matter for them. I mean, the first boss already cost them a lot of time because Zmok went down, so they had to play it safe, where everything just took longer. And now we also see a Shine going down, just having to release, having to run back. All of this matters so much. Well, Method EU is already in the second boss. They already dealt with everything. They have the spotter available to them. I'm not sure if they put the spotter into Raging yet, but they are, they are far ahead at this point, and they have 0 deaths as well.
And why is nobody grabbing that cannon? It took so long for Method EU there. I think it was just barraged by, well, cannon barrage there, and it was completely surrounded. And on one side they had the Sanguini on the ground too, so they couldn't exactly move over to it. So just wasted a few seconds there, but I guess that's just countered by Ashline's death earlier. So 0 deaths on the board for Method EU. Of course, we have the 2 for Abrakeydabra right now as Dread Captain. Lockwood, second boss here in Siege of Boralus, is now sub 70% for Method EU. Now, this boss is on a phase timer here, so, I mean, ideally you just want to skip that last transition phase as best as you can, but you will inevitably probably have 3 of them at this tyrannical level with the gear level that the players have, so Abrakeydabra wasting no time and starting on her as well.
It's one nice shot that we've seen from both of those teams is when they were doing the skip earlier across the bridge, we saw both of the Windwalkers being carried by the Raster Druids back on that stack form, being able to wild charge over because the monks have no way of going over. It's very nice play by both Method and Abra, carrying their Windwalkers basically because they're not rogues. So unfortunately, they can't do the grappling hook.
You're not wrong. Windwalkers are not.
Yeah, there we go. I'm very smart. Now, Abrakeydabra is also doing the boss right now, but of course they engaged it way later. So I don't know what they have to do at this point. Maybe something, as you mentioned, they just have to do one of these Hail Mary pulls where they get the spotters and just pull everything up until the next boss.
A lot of the mass time that you save and make in this dungeon that we see Method and A do, that we saw Abrakeydabra pretty much copy pasta from Method and A do, is post second boss, and is using those spotters with a massive pull into the courtyard before the third boss, and then also using that same spotter to kill the third boss's room. We saw how unstable it was. Method and A was able to pull it off with a couple of casualties, and No Girls Allowed was not able to pull it off in the previous dungeon. So that's really where it's going to come down to it for Abrakeydabra to try and make up some time, assuming nothing else goes wrong until that point.
And those are very scary pulls too. We've seen Method and A pull it off perfectly before, but we've never actually seen Method EU do this dungeon before on the cup. We've seen them, of course, do it in time trials and on practice on stream, but they never actually did it in cup play. So I'm not completely sure if they copied Method and A's strategy, which seemed to be like the most perfect strategy we've seen so far, with this huge pull that you can see by Method EU probably right now, and then the second big pull that is going to happen in the next boss room, where you just pull the boss, reset the boss, and you get the whole boss area on top of some of the snipers before as well.
Method EU obviously has finished the boss. I want to say Abra has just now finished the boss. Method EU has already primed one of their big pulls over in the village area, as they've kind of gotten the gunners away from the barrier first. They've rooted the Emissary of Tides, as we see most teams do. We have a skull marked on that Tempest. The Tempest, of course, casts a heal, not a heal, but a silence and a bunch of nasty casts on the tank. So you want to make sure you have access to interrupts and crowd control on that unit, which is why the Emissary of Tides has been rooted in crowd control on the side. Method EU nicely kiting away, not only for the Sanguine, but to get away from those darn bananas that fall on the ground and stun you non-stop.
Yeah, one thing to note as well is that the artillery here from the spotter does not actually damage the Demolisher. It also does not damage the emissaries, as far as I'm aware. Unfortunately, the Demolisher and Abra side sitting in that Sanguine for quite a while, healing to full HP. And this is a big problem because no matter how much time you save by the artillery of the spotter dealing with those other mobs, you still have to deal with the Demolisher in the end because it's not going to be damaged. So this is not actually a time gain if we just have it healed to full HP, because you can't move on until this Demolisher is dead.
Yeah, I mean, but they might have to. I mean, they're going to have to do something, because every small misplay like that, and it just did it again there because it was casting its AoE. The thing is, this is preventable, Nigger. We've talked about this before. You have Typhoon available on Smock, it's not on cooldown. You have Ring of Peace available on Swag, it's not on cooldown. All these mobs that are dying under the Demolisher right now are displaceable, and they are not using them. They see that the mobs are at 3% health. They know that the Crusher can cast one if it's two uninterruptible casts and is therefore immobile. Why would you not pre-punt these mobs out of the way? So just a misplay here from Abrakeydabra that's costing them precious seconds against a Method EU team that is now doing their substantial pull. But Mears goes down here. Of course, they have access to 2 battle reses, but Zaylee does not want to commit the GCD right now because there's just so much damage going into the group currently.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Ring of Peace and Typhoon, just such a perfect ability to use just because the Demolisher, of course, is immune to the knockback, right? So you can knock all the mobs away, and Demolisher is just going to stand there. So just a perfect ability to avoid the Sanguine healing. So just like bad play or not thinking ahead by Abrakeydabra. Also, Method U just getting some of the Sanguine heal here on the Demolisher as well. So both teams having trouble with this Sanguine, just such an annoying affix to deal with. We also see the snipers being pulled by Method U, and they're dropping very low here as the snipers. You can still see them and kill them with the spotter, but you need to attack them at the very end to be able to get the percentage, because if they die to the artillery only by the spotter, you do not actually get the count for it.
Indeed, and a bit of a cleaner pull here for Abrakeydabra, finally what you want to see coming out of them. They've done this pull cleaner than Method EU has right now, so they're just finishing off their Demolisher, but didn't have too much healing, of course, didn't lose anyone in the process, and we finally have a good Zmok out of the way for those mobs from Swag right there, just making sure he does not get an extra healing. Now the next big pull that we're going to have to focus on is coming up right here. Excellent view from our observers on the Method EU side. They're going to tag the boss, which in turn aggroes the entire room, and this is going to be another difficult one here.
Yeah, most definitely. We see, unfortunately, Abrakeydabra has all those snipers standing this Sanguine. This is a huge problem for them, because those snipers do an insane amount of damage to everyone. They randomly shoot people. There's a lot of damage. You can see a shine dropping very low here. So if they have this standing Sanguine, it's going to be a huge problem. But they managed to get them out here, so they should be able to finish them off, and they can line of sight to shoot. So we saw the rogues just go back, and we saw Smok go back, being able to line of sight, so the snipers do not hit them, and they also walk out of Sanguine there. So well done.
Yeah, Zmok was just sitting there mashing his Typhoon Key because it had about 5 seconds left on cooldown. The moment it came up, he punted those two snipers right out of that Sanguine, but more seconds lost right now as Method U is dealing with the big pull. Shield Wall, excuse me, has come up 4 now. Right now is 5 stacks of the poison. Now, the spotter does not affect the commanders, but that's okay. They do have access to Blood Elves that can get rid of their bolster shield as a result, as long as they kill everything else. Mirrors goes down again. Fortunately, they do have one more battle res, so Method EU, a bit of slop here, but manages to squeeze by one more time. The majority of the dangerous mobs are dead here. They just have to deal with the double commander pull and get ready to deal with the emissaries that are left over in the room, and they're going to be pretty aggressive here. They're actually going to combine it with the boss and Bloodlust on top of it.
The Battlefield dropping so low, almost going down here. Now, Abra does have 2 battle rests available to them. We also saw them struggle again a little bit with Sanguine on both Method U and Abra side, as those commanders, they are also immune to the spotter artillery. So the commanders, they need to be single targeted down. They cannot be killed by the spotter. We see the same thing on Abra's side, that they also engage the boss while still having those commanders up, also popping their Bloodlust here, not saving it for the last boss. But at this point, Method U is already in 75%. On Tyrannical, this boss just takes so long.
Yeah, but there is one thing we have to talk about here, that with how, I mean, it's close, you're right. It's not that close, but it's close. Both teams now have 2 deaths on the board, so any advantage that Method U had there is gone with Mirrors' double death on the trash before this boss. But Zalia's popped his staff at this point. We still have staff charged up and ready from Zmok later in the dungeon, which could play a quite vital role when trying to nuke down the gripping terrors on Vikoth, the final boss. So we'll have to see where they opt to proc it, if they can proc it, because we saw JB in the previous series try to do it and fail to do it, so then they just had a staff that never procced. So we'll see here from Abrakeydabra if they're able to pull that off once they deal with Hadal here, but right now they are indeed still 25% behind on the boss.
Yeah, that can definitely be something crucial, because this stuff just almost one-shooting one of those gripping tentacles will help them so much. Now, again, 30% difference, or 25% difference rather, is quite a lot of HP on a Tyrannical Hadal boss, but other than that, this boss is really not difficult at all for those kind of teams. It really just has a lot of HP, and you need to make sure that you do as much single target damage as possible. As you can see, the rest of Druids trying to switch in and out of cat form to
Oh no, Sanguine healing on Hadal. You gotta take off, so that's 4% went up on Hadal right there. He was just caught mid-crashing Tides cast, and unfortunately the commander died right under him. There's nothing they could do. They tried to pre-kite him out of it, but that's just part of the danger of kiting mobs with it. Now they're 35% behind on this boss as Method EU rockets even further ahead with their superior single target damage.
The same thing happened to Abra in Atal when they were playing against Method NA earlier. Just having this Sanguine go off on the boss is just so bad on a Tyrannical setting. It just costs you so much time, because we talked about how much HP this boss has, so one tick of Sanguine is just gonna lose you so much time, while Method U is already done with the boss. They're on their way to this last boss. And now in the spring final, when we saw those teams play Siege, we actually had them drag the spotters to this last boss because those tentacles would actually get damaged by their artillery.
Hey.
Woo!
Congratulations, Twitch chat. You got 65 slot neck.
But yeah, the artillery does not actually damage those tentacles anymore, so therefore the spotters are killed off, and they have to deal with the tentacles by themselves.
Yeah, I mean, yay, the neck level. Adele here at 5% HP for Abra. They're clawing away at him, just trying to catch up as much as they can right now, but Method EU is about to finish their first platform. The Gripping Terror now sub 20%. Abra just cannot wait to get over there, but they've just dug themselves such a bad hole right now that not even a fully charged staff, I don't think, can really get them out of this hole. So they're going to have to hope for a death on Method EU, which they will not have a battle res for.
Yeah.
But this boss, really not the most dangerous boss in the world. I mean, you know, obviously you can misplay it, get hit by one of the swirlies by accident. Fraggy actually does pop his death there, so a bit of danger coming up. They've left these tentacles a bit too late right now. Finally, one of the cracking hulls does hit the group, which is why they chunked in damage, but they managed to down them before anything gets too far out of hand.
Yeah, so if they do have a death, which can happen on this boss fight, I mean, he said it's not very difficult, which is true, but if you min-max too much and you, because how the platforms work is if once you have finished the Gripping Tentacle, no more Demolishers will spawn. But if you try to go on a Gripping Tentacle, you put all damage onto them, and then you get too many Demolishers at the same time, you're just gonna wipe, you're just gonna have deaths, because they need to be tanked. If there's no one in range, they will cast the AoE, which we've seen on the first platform. So if they overdo themselves and they think they can kill off the Gripping Tentacle before the next Demolisher spawns, and then they won't be able to do so, then they're gonna be in trouble.
Abra actually finished that platform a fair bit faster than Method EU there. They did not have the extra Demolishing Terror spawn that almost caused Method EU to lose a member, so a bit of an advantage there. That might be enough. I mean, we'll see exactly. The staff still hasn't procced for his Mach as far as I know. We don't see a debuff on his frame, so that could come into play a bit later, but Method EU is finishing their second platform right now and is rushing over to the third top speed to try and finish off that gripping whilst ignoring the high health Demolish.
Nice view there out of the Cannon S. Now shoots the cannon shot onto the boss. Now this is the crucial part on the last platform where you just put all damage out on his Gripping Tentacle. We see Thalia here doing as much damage as possible while everyone else is nuking this Gripping Terror. You do not want to kill those Demolishers on this last platform. You do need to be fast though, because if you don't kill it fast enough, you're gonna have more Demolishers spawning. Oh, we actually saw this spell come out and they just like flew away. They need to get back at the tentacle here as one of the dispels. So this debuff, as you can see on right now, once it's dispelled, the people that are close to you are actually going to get knocked away, which is what just happened.
And they're trying to stay alive here right now. They got an extra Crushing Tentacle spawn, which Gingy has to off-tank, otherwise Hullcracker will start hitting the entire group right now. They managed to kill it off, and they just have to tank these terrors for a bit longer, and they're going to be able to kind of clinch this win off. Mirza's go down, and we get hits left and right going up as the cannon gets fixed. Everybody's just trying to stay alive here. Zalia goes down too. Fraggy goes down. They managed to finish the match, but they handed an extra 15 seconds over to Abrakeydabra, who's working on the last platform right now. We have just had the staff proc right now. Gripping Terror is about to go down, so they have 10 seconds left. Gripping Terror needs to die here, and they need to wait for the cannon to rebuild and immediately shoot it to try and win this match, but I don't think it'll be enough time as the RP takes too long. And unfortunately, Abra, just too little too late, does not manage to tie the series up, and back to our comfort zone. Method EU takes the first cup.
Method EU, no surprise here, showing that they are unbeatable in cup play, taking that 2-0 sweep over Abrakeydabra. And it's ironic, that got a little too close for comfort there. Well, maybe one more death.
Dude, one more death and it would have been it, because the RP would have finished. They could have shot the cannon instantly, and that would have been like 2 or 3 seconds. That's one of the closest matches we've had this entire tournament. But like you mentioned, I mean, we're back to where we are. Method EU dominant once again, proving, you know, somewhat that LAN was just a fluke for them, I guess. They're just dominant when it comes to tournament play.
It's just a setback onto that one.
Yeah, but just going into this map, this was just not clean really that much from either teams. Method EU had a lot of mistakes, random spot deaths all over the place, but when it came to actually putting all the pulls together, they did a better job. We mentioned it a lot on broadcast here. Abrakeydabra just had very unbecoming mistakes of them in this dungeon, which you'd think they have practice. They had Sanguine Healing all over the place. One of those Demolishers got a lot of Sanguine Healing. They even had a couple of ticks of Sanguine Healing here on Haddle as well. But also, like we mentioned, Mirez, a couple spot deaths on this trash pull here in Haddle's room. And we also saw almost having a full wipe at the end of Vikov, but just barely pulling it out at the end, Method EU. I mean, you can't say it was clean, but they are the champions once again.
That's what it's all about, is making sure you're able to come out on top at the end of it, because there always is going to be those mistakes from one side or the other, but whether or not you're putting yourself in a strong enough position to be able to get the job done, you're seeing Gingy just barely being able to be alive long enough to get that. So Method EU does take that grand final 2-0 against Abrakeydabra. But this also has been the first time we've seen Abra in that grand final spot, so second place finish for them is quite good. If we jump over to our points earned here, start seeing where everybody is standing after just this tournament, so what everybody's bringing in. Now again, points have been increased by 50% since last season. So as a result, Method EU is at 210 points with Abra at 150, Method NA 120, No Girls Allowed at 90, with 60 for 40K and Paint for Femme. So adding that all together, our yearly standings, we're checking out Abrakeydabra sitting very secure with 370 points, 40K at 220. And we haven't seen Team Pualuka qualify just yet, but they do have 120 if we see them again, while No Girls Allowed stepping up at that 90. So No Girls Allowed or Paint for Femme want to start getting a little bit further into this. 40K is definitely not secure on this one, Salute, but it's a long way to go for some of these competitors.
It's a long way to go, and I mean, you don't have unlimited time. We're done a third of the Western Cups at this point. You gotta gear up and you gotta gun for the top spot, and it's gonna be tough against teams like this. Obviously, the Method team certainly haven't sat back. They're out to prove that they're still the best. Method NA wants to defend his title. Method EU wants to redeem themselves after the loss versus NA and Abrakeydabra. I mean, we saw the showing that they had this week. They want to be the best. They want to send a message. So there's not a lot of room for these lower teams trying to get up there and prove themselves and get the points for BlizzCon right now, Jack.
And with the dominance from these top three teams, you have to look at the point differential there, because I mean, if you look at the two teams that are like kind of looking to get to that top four spot, 40K has 220 points. The two teams that are closest to them right now that are actually competing, we don't know what happened to Pualuka, unfortunately. Maybe they'll be coming back next week, we never know. But Paint for Femme and No Girls Allowed, they're at 90 and 60 points. They have to make up that 130 or 160 point difference to have a chance of going for BlizzCon, and that's a lot of points to make up when you can only get 90 by getting fourth place.
But to be honest, I mean, if you look at 40K's performance, they definitely have not performed up to their standards. We've seen Abrakeydabra definitely stepping up. They really want to get to BlizzCon, but 40K, they disqualified very early, so maybe there's still a chance for Paint for Femme or No Girls Allowed.
There definitely will be a chance for them, and there's also going to be a very good chance of some upheaval in the MDI, as we're having a sweep of balance changes coming in starting this Tuesday. So this is not affecting the Eastern region's time trials, but it will affect their tournament play coming up this following weekend. So Frost and Unholy Death Knights, Destruction Warlocks and Armed Warriors all getting those 5% damage boosts, while the big one that we're all keeping our eyes on is Blade Flurry, going for 30% of normal damage, and previously was 45%. While the Azerite trait, Keep Your Wits About You, increases your chance for Sinister Strike by 3%, was 5%. So some big nerfs coming in, and some Resto Shaman buffs, which should be nice for a raiding environment. But onto this one, we got one last thing on our itinerary before we get ourselves wrapped up. And you might notice Tettle's not here, but he really should be, because we've got some... there he is. Yay! Can we take one, pass it down, as we have a very special birthday coming on for all of us. Tettles can meet me at the end over here. We have a great many cupcakes to celebrate Zyronic's birthday as he turns 27, I think.
27 years young.
I think.
I'll add I think, because he didn't even know it was his own birthday today. So
that is true.
It took my dad texting me to figure out it was my birthday. I completely forgot.
I mean,
I love that.
It is your birthday, son.
Aw, thanks, Luke Dad.
Aw,
So, happy birthday to Zyronic. Let's all enjoy our lovely,
guys.
lovely
Cheers.
cupcakes.
Cheers for the muffin shot. Oh,
Wow.
It's a
beautiful.
Not a muffin. But
excuse me, eat.
Sorry.
that's very
can't.
disrespectful. Come on.
Not even Sarah's eating.
I'm good.
Listen to me.
Can we just do this?
If you don't eat that, I'm going to eat it for you.
Tettles and I are about to just enjoy and just snack down on all of it and sleep too, I guess.
I didn't even wait. Now there's sprinkles everywhere.
I'm sorry. Hitman.
Oh.
But he wears a white shirt. He said that to me earlier today.
Yeah. Not even respecting the looks that he's putting together. Well, hopefully we'll be able to see Hitman Salute coming up in the next week, because we will have next week's MDI starting Friday night for our Eastern Seaboard friends at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And 7 p.m. Man, that is a sweet cupcake, let me tell you. And 7 p.m. on the Pacific Coast here. And we're getting ourselves wrapped up after a lovely day of dungeon action coming into it. cupcakes and steaks. And great birthdays from our good friends, Ironic. Let's calm it down. Slow down, let's calm ourselves down. So be sure to tune in next Friday. That right, like Kettles is saying, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific for more Mythic Dungeon International action as we check out our Eastern region. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great night.